recognized symbol of excellence in sports entertainment.
Hey, it's Conrad Thompson, and you're listening to My World. And of course, we couldn't do it without the Hall of Famer, the greatest professional wrestler of all time, your friend and mine, Double J, JArrett. Jeff, how are you, man?
Oh, Conrad Thompson, how we doing, pal? You know what? Well, for you audio listeners only, I'm going to go ahead and tip my cap. Conrad, you sound crystal clear, even better than back at the Conradison. And visually, I'm just going to kind of live vicariously. I can almost smell the sand and the fresh beach water and living the high life. One day I aspire to be, Conrad.
Oh, my.
We're going to have to work on that backlighting. That doesn't work. You need some more front lighting. But Conrad, happy to be here with you today. I really am. We did us a best of last week. A lot of moving parts. I had to, recover from that concession stand brawl where I whooped ass all over Chicago. You've had a lot of things going on. Top guy,
highest rated segment on the show. # humble brag.
I wouldn't go in there. I'll let you go there, but I don't want to talk about the week before on Rampage. That 6-man was also the
highest rated segment on the show. And I mean, you weren't on this past Wednesday show, and I almost feel like you should have been since you've got this streak going. But of course, as folks are listening, today is the 4th of July. So I hope you guys have a safe and happy holiday here in America, and let's keep all those fingers intact. And I apologize if I sound and look a little different. This is our maiden voyage from Pensacola. So I don't have my backdrop set up yet. Don't have all my lighting dialed in, but we'll get there. But for a maiden voyage, I knew the first thing I needed was something that has eluded Jeff for many, many years. Good internet. So I'm rocking the high-speed internet. So that's not an issue. Just all the other stuff.
Have I gave you the update on old Hendersonville?
I know y'all had a rat problem, and I thought Teeny ran them out decades ago. But I guess there's still some.
Getting the cable run across the house, man, it's hard to find good help. Anyway, I've been he said, she said, but we're working on that. We're it's the most simplest thing, but yeah, that is yet to be installed as we speak. Karen is on, literally, Conrad. I just came up running late. Anyway, when I walked in, she's like, I'm on the phone and all this. She's talking to our friends of Xfinity because although we have the dedicated line and all that, we're still not up and running, fully functioning. But they went ahead and billed us. I mean, they went ahead. So the Queen is letting them know very diplomatically that no. And so I think everything's being pushed down the road a month for the billing. So all good. But
hey, Jeff, what's your favorite airline?
Oh boy, loaded question. Delta.
Okay. You ever have any bad experiences with luggage in Delta?
Knock on wood. I mean, there's been many a time all through the years that it didn't quite make the connection in Detroit for whatever reason. They sometimes book Atlanta anyway. But hey, I mean, it's on the next flight and I get it home. Now, WestJet. Do you even know what WestJet is?
I'll be honest. I thought you were making up words, I thought that was somebody that Shoes Baseball was involved with. We got to get WestJet to the table, and the people of Central Illinois, a lot of chatter, need to work through the ballpark. What's going on with WestJet? Do they have your gear?
So somebody joked with me and said, if you have like a directional north, south, east, west, like kind of in the title of your airline, you might not be doing so good. So WestJet, I was told that it's kind of like a Southwest, but I love Southwest here in the States.
Right.
Anyway, needless to say, Tuesday, got on a flight here, had a direct Nashville to Toronto. And easy, roll right in there. WestJet, they only operate, I think, 2 flights, maybe a day, maybe 1 or 2. They actually have a nonstop, Conrad, from Nashville to Calgary, but Nashville to Toronto. So got up to Toronto Tuesday night, got off there, went through baggage claim, right through customs, had all the appropriate paperwork. Good old fine folks in Canada. I always love rolling in there. And the bags came off, no bags. And because it was a 2-day trip, Karen said, "Hey, do you mind? I'm just going to have this little carry-on. Can I put some of my stuff in your bag?" "Oh, sure, honey, no problem." So we doubled up. No bag, Conrad. No bag. In sight Tuesday night, nowhere to be found. But it was a very classic conversation with me and a gentleman from WestJet Airlines, and it was straight out of a page of Tommy Boy. So please fill out the paperwork. I filled it all out. And he looked at me with a dead serious face, and he checked their flight schedules and everything. And after I told him about 3 times, we kind of need to figure out where this is bag at. "Sir, we don't have a tracer on your bag. We don't know where it's at." I said, "Well, it's either in Nashville or in Toronto. Kind of, it's at a nonstop. We don't know where it's at." I said, "Okay, so let's kind of deduct. I'm thinking it's still in Nashville if you said you went back there." "Well, we can't really look in customs quite yet, but just because it wasn't scanned in," which I later found out WestJet does not scan bags in. They go old school. And look, I hate the folks that get online and at this airline or at this hotel or whatever. Just kind of keep it private. So here I am kind of spilling the beans, but I'm kind of giving you my experience over the last 72 hours. But they looked at me, Conrad, with just dead serious. Said, "Mr. JArrett, we can get your bag to you tomorrow night at 11:30. I said, "Sir, I'm in Hamilton, and the show starts at 6 tomorrow. Me getting it at 11:30, not going to do a lot of good." "Okay, well, we'll work on that. We'll get it to the hotel. You filled out here. You're staying at this hotel." I said, "I'm leaving Thursday morning." "Okay." I mean, we went through this song and dance, and I'm a little late to the party here on the podcast here today. And the reason being, I had an appointment, but also have had not 1, not 2, but 3 calls with the wonderful folks at Baggage Services with WestJet, and they have found my bag. It was in Toronto, and now it is going to be shipped. But Conrad, tomorrow is Canada Day. That is their version of our 4th of July. So they can't ship it tomorrow. Not going to ship it Sunday, but they're going to get it out Monday. And you know what next Tuesday is here, right?
Travel day for you and 4th of July. Yeah.
Oh, so you want to be a wrestler? I've given Karen that sign a couple of times, that word. So anyway, all good. It was a bump in the road, but man, nothing like travel woes. Nothing like wearing a walking boot and being driven down to the beach. But I've had my share of travel woes. So
Well, I'll tell you, man, the original plan, I was supposed to, as you know, I was
I
supposed to
know.
be in Australia right now. And so
Yeah.
Megan and I had been really excited. I mean, that was sort of our planned vacation. And I thought, man, I'll just rock this walking boot all week. And by the end of the week, I'll be good to go. And somehow it got worse. I guess I overdid it. I don't know. But I'm sort of down in the dumps. And Megan says, "Well, I plan to take the days off. Why don't we just go do something?" And I'm like, "I can't do anything. I mean, I barely freaking walk." And she goes, "Well, you can barely freaking walk at the beach." So we're barely freaking walking at the beach. And here we are. And you and I are going to have some fun today. We should plug right now that even though WrestleQuest is right around the corner and you and I are really excited about it, the AEW game Fight Forever is finally out. A lot of chatter. Tell me, what does Cody think of the game? I'm sure he's had a chance to check it out.
Our man Coaster has and if you check his social media out, they left on Saturday. Kira and Cody,
Right. They're at the beach too.
they're at the beach, pal. They're just a little what would that be? Southeast of you.
Yes.
Yes. So they are at the beach with Kurt and all of his children. But they're all down there. So I hadn't got a chance. I know Codes is super fired up. Multiple. He's going to get it on. What is it? Xbox, PS5, Nintendo, whatever the little gadget is. Anyway, he's super fired up. You know what I really enjoyed, Conrad, though, about this Fight Forever? Look, I'm not the gamer, even on WrestleQuest. I'm pumped about it. It's a role-playing game and all that. But I'm on the wrestling side of it, the business side of it, but kind of seeing all the talent tweeting and posting and Instagram. Of course, it always takes me back to my kind of early TNA days when we got that first gaming deal and the anticipation. And there's a lot of guys Kenny Omega being at the very top of that. I don't know all the ins and outs of it, but I know that there's a lot of sweat equity with folks that have worked their butt off on this game, just getting to where it's at. So hats off to all of them. It is a big milestone in the licensing world of, I don't say just professional wrestling, but any kind of brand. When you get a action figure deal, it's huge because it's mass retail. It's, I can't even say Toys R Us anymore, but it's Walmart and all that. But the video game deal is another level. It just is truly another level. And that industry is huge. And, it's a global type deal. So I'm super excited for a lot of folks. I guess the OGs at AEW that have been here from day one, and the scratching and clawing and grinding and the stutter starts and the pandemic and the workflow. And there's so much that goes into it. And man, patience. You talk about the old adage, patience is an action. That's part of the video game world because there's so many ins and outs of it. Again, I don't profess to be the expert by any stretch, but I'm happy. I'm really happy for the brand in so many ways. When we all get caught up in, I don't even say week to week, sometimes day to day ins and outs. But when you kind of take a step back and look at the growth and the Collision launch and Forbidden Door, super successful, headed toward Wembley, a video game release, House Rules. I can't wait for that in the fall. And Conrad, just so many things going on. And look, we've talked about all brands here. WWE, I mean, success after success after success. The SmackDown number for years kind of hovered around that mark. They've had an uptick. Just business all over the world is good. So Fight Forever, it is a milestone, and hopefully it's one of many releases in the gaming world for the brand.
There's still a creator wrestler function in the game. So while Jeff is not included in the initial release, you can create Jeff Jarrett. And I've actually seen some pretty good ones. So if you're playing the game and enjoying the game, please tweet your Jeff Jarrett creator wrestler, your calls, if you will, at MyWorldPod. So if you made a Jeff Jarrett, you made a Last Outlaw, let's see it at MyWorldPod on Twitter. Of course, we all saw Forbidden Door. Jeff, it was quite a show. I really enjoyed the actual matches themselves. What a story in that main event. Bryan Danielson breaking his arm, a brutal break, and still finishing against Okada. But the match I think everyone was talking about was Ospreay Omega. That led to a lot of debates online. I'm not trying to have a debate. I will say I was blown away with the match. You had a chance to see it. What did you think?
Always when I'm asked this, we talk about creative being subjective.
Yes.
And we talk about, I don't want to be repetitive, or I don't want to say jump on any one bandwagon, because at the end of the day, it has to suit your personal taste of the style of wrestling. But I thought those two gentlemen, in a lot of ways, gosh, because you can compare it to so many different kind of rivalries through the years, that there's no doubt in my mind, Kenny and Will have no problem knocking the hell out of each other. I just very physical, do not mind. And I don't want to say potato, because that I was kind of taught, potato is kind of an accident, or maybe some live rounds.
Strong style.
Yeah. But I just think at the end of the day, those guys, and I try to articulate this, but you're so much better at it, Conrad, when you kind of sum it up. But I feel watching that match, and again, this ain't inside baseball. I don't have any personal knowledge of this. I watched this just like a fan. I drove home from anyway, when I watched it, I was by myself, and the competitive nature that I believe those two gentlemen bring out in each other,
yes,
is the magic ingredient. And not
what it's all about.
Not every person me or any other wrestler that you work with, that doesn't just always happen. Sometimes you just have different priorities, different agenda. Sometimes it's just the nature of the beach. This is a TV match. You've got 4.5, 6.5, 8.5. You just got a limited time frame. There's so many different factors that go into making up the recipe, but it's pretty obvious that as far as a time limit, they kind of got to paint their own canvas. Other than very few things, those two guys got in there. And I think from the very moment that back in Japan, I'm assuming that's where they had their very first match, but there is a competitive nature that shines through to me all over the screen, all over the arena. The kick out on one, yes, great timing and storytelling, but I just think so much more goes into those kind of deals that the audience was so emotionally connected to their story that it just tore the roof off. So I can give it all the accolades and praise, and this was good and that was good, or the chatter about this particular move, not safe, unsafe, was it safe? We could talk forever about the subjectivity of it, but the thing that I want to compliment the most is I truly believe the essence of our business is competing against one another, and that was to me, one of the best examples I've seen in a long time. Two guys that wanted to go out and show each other up. That's simple.
Who brought out the best in you in your career over the years?
God, for different reasons. I gotta say, with everything that was going on in remove the personal side of it, but in my professional life, at that stage of Kurt Angle, when look, here I am still wrestling week to week now, but I had, we signed Kurt, and, you can, as we talked through the podcast, for lack of a better word, I'd been a heavy force as far as in-ring talent from 2002 when we launched up till about 2006-ish, 7-ish, and I went away, and Kurt was there day in and day out. So I'll say this, in my mind, my best days of in-ring competition were pretty much in my rearview mirror. I never said I've retired or nothing like that. But in 2010, when me and Kurt had our series of matches, there was a competitive nature, because who doesn't want to compete with a Olympic gold medalist or whatever you want to say? But just Kurt, Shawn Michaels in the 90s, every time, I don't care if it was a single or a tag or if I was tagging, whatever, Shawn, I love to push myself. I think his athleticism is just right up there. And then in a kind of a unique way, Lawler. When I was working with Lawler, I wanted to, his psychology is so good. Less is more. Just a absolute master at the subtleties and the small things that you do in a match. And, we did that 60 through a couple of times in Tennessee. We had some matches in Memphis beyond that. So those three, I feel, are guys that I wanted to compete and really, really achieve. I'm sure I'm missing a few here and there, but those three off the top of my mind.
Well, let's talk about what else is on the top of our mind. Your brand new shirt over at shopaew.com. I'd be remiss if I didn't plug it. I saw lots of people putting it over, being very complimentary. Your boy Joey Janela said he's going to pick this one up right away. What a cool shirt, Jeff. That's available now.
Cardona tweeted about it.
It looks awesome, man. Like, everybody has enjoyed this new resurgence, and look at that dude on there, man. Look at that handsome fella.
Look at those abs, pal.
I mean, have you ever had those like that before?
So there was a conversation at catering the other day, and I'll leave the names out, but we just chuckled, and they're like, Jeff, you've never had abs. What the hell is going on? And I said, right. I'll just give you one word that prevents abs: alcohol. I mean, true. You hear about beer belly. Yeah, that's a real thing. You hear beer, that's bread in a can, but it's those carbs that, I mean, I was good cardio shape and weight wise and strength as far as all that kind of stuff. But if you want to cut your body fat, I mean, alcohol, boy, you've kind of find through the years. I mean, it is a metabolism killer.
Right.
It is sugar, and it is just the absolute worst thing you can do, because you drink a couple of, look, I'm not preaching here, but I mean, you have a few drinks. Okay. That's some empty carbs, that sugar and all that kind of stuff. But the thing that it does for your metabolism for the next 6, 12, 8 hours is what is kind of the silent monster. You don't even realize that, oh, I'm not drinking. Okay. Your metabolism doesn't really recover for the next 24 hours. That's part of it. So,
well, how about that? You learn something new every day. Pick up that shirt, rock that shirt with those brand new abs, shop AEW.com. Let's get into it, man. Our topic today is the 1-year anniversary of TNA. We've got so much time talking about, how you got started with TNA. And now here we are talking about the 1-year anniversary. My goodness.
Can you believe it, Conrad? We have done the startup of TNA. Yep. We have done, the different anniversaries. We've done Bound for Glories. When the notes were sent to me, I'm thinking to myself, we had to have covered, because this was year 1 before we even named it Slammiversary. And obviously we haven't. So as we dive in today, the ins and the outs, Russo, Jeff Hardy, Sean Waltman, of course, Sting, my father, the different ingredients, the ups and downs, a name that we hadn't talked about here, this whole story, Hattori from New Japan. There is just the 1-year milestone. I'm surprised we hadn't covered this. So I was just looking the other day, Conrad, on some of the rankings of our episodes that brother Dave Green. But it's people love for us to talk about TNA. So for those that don't like TNA subject, I apologize. But man, this has a little bit for everybody. But this 1-year milestone, Conrad, it was something that from an internal mindset, it was a milestone that we all recognized. I think the biggest anniversary shows that I've been a part of through my career that really celebrated things in a way, like WWF, they don't really celebrate a yearly thing, and WCW never did either. But Puerto Rico, their anniversary shows, didn't they just have their 50th? But I mean, it's a big deal. So for us at TNA, when we were creeping up on that year, there was a chatter and buzz on how are we going to do this, and we kind of all came together collectively in our mindset on the weekly pay-per-views. Said, hey, let's build towards something and make this a blowout show for the month of June. But this was the precursor to Slammiversary.
I'm excited to talk about it. We should sort of just catch everybody up where we are. You're going to finish up the month of June with Glenn Gilberti. That's actually the first pay-per-view of June in our main event, the former Disco Inferno. And you're still in the middle of working stuff with Raven, and he's going to be backstage and do an interview with Goldilocks. And he's basically going to compare you to David Hasselhoff and says that you have both beat the odds. Neither one of you have any talent or charisma, but you've somehow deluded yourselves into believing you're responsible for the success of the shows you've been on. I love a David Hasselhoff shout out here. Raven's always been an underrated promo. I think he's doing some stuff with MLW these days. How was it, these promos with Raven? I mean, is he coming up with his own stuff here? Is Russo helping him with some stuff? What do you recall?
I would, when I read the notes, I would imagine that'd been on one of those cart rides.
Yes.
Back and forth from Nashville to Memphis. And a lot of the very best stuff kind of comes out of it. So, Russo and Raven making the trip up, it does sound very Ravenous, but also I can hear Vince kind of conjuring that up. But so Hasselhoff, he was Baywatch. I was trying to think all of his anyway.
Baywatch was the hot thing at the time for sure.
That's what he was referring to, right?
Well, and perhaps Knight Rider, but really the star of Knight Rider was Kit, and the star of Bay White was Pam Anderson.
Okay.
So I guess he's saying the star of your show is everybody else or the guitar.
Yeah, I got you.
Which makes me laugh. That's pretty fun. Don Harris is scheduled to team with Ron Killings, but he's going to say that he won't team with someone of his kind. So fellow SEX member Elix Skipper was asked what he meant. Harris said he meant Killings is always playing the race card whenever anything goes wrong. And Elix seemed content with this answer. We just recently saw some photos where Elix Skipper was visiting some folks at the Impact taping last weekend in Atlanta. Are you surprised that Elix Skipper didn't stick with wrestling longer? I mean, I know he walked away from it, but that dude, I could just imagine he could be a player today. I'm not saying necessarily in ring. I mean, I don't know how long he could have kept that style going, but I would like to see Elix Skipper get his flowers and maybe somebody do something with him. Were you surprised we didn't see much more with him?
For sure. And a gym conversation. I got a couple of folks that are podcast listeners in the gym, and they were like, "Oh my God, I hadn't seen Elix." And my buddy said, you know, what's a shame is that Elix is really remembered only for that kind of tightrope walk and Don West's call. And it's like, that was as if that was Elix's kind of only high spot. You look at Elix's body of work in TNA, him and Daniels were really good. And yeah, low key, yes, Triple X is what they're called. But Elix, on the one hand, I wish he would have stuck with it. On the other hand, he obviously did what was best for Elix. And when you look in the era of professional wrestling, it's really almost right before social media and right before or as it was breaking. But independent wrestling in the 2000s to 2010ish, Conrad, it just, you know, you look at Cardona out there killing it, and he's and others that have a full-time living off independent wrestling from WCW closing down till, I don't know, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, something like that. It was tough. So Elix was in that time frame. He obviously made a decision to go make a full-time living and not kind of scratch and claw. And my hat's off to him for doing that, really. But great to see him on social media being there, and all the photos that were taken and the shout outs. And I don't even know if you saw this one, Conrad, but AJ Styles commented on somebody's, and I'm thinking, good for AJ. Those were, you never forget these days that you know, the scratching, the clawing. None of us were making money. We didn't really, you know, nobody was like 100% convinced we were going to be around a month or two, let alone a year, let alone 21 years. But yeah, it was great to see Elix on social media.
Hey guys, it's the hardcore legend Mick Foley here, and I need to call a quick timeout, a brief timeout, because I wanted to tell your listeners what I have been telling Foley is Pod listeners for a while now about all the cool things happening over on adfreeshows.com.
David Crockett and Conrad go day by day through June of 1985 in Jim Crockett Promotions on the latest episode of The Book, the month that the grandson of a plumber arrived.
June 30th, Cody Rhodes is going to be born. I mean, his dad is wrestling with Tully Blanchard in Los Angeles, and Dusty's got to hurry home and rush out of there and get home to Charlotte to see his wife Michelle give birth to the American Nightmare. It's a special day in Jim Crockett Promotions history.
Jake the Snake Roberts chatted live with Ad Free Shows members about his Hall of Fame career and a story about Ron Garvin you won't soon forget.
You know, everybody's got a tell, you know, so you know if they do that, then here comes his comeback. You know what Ronnie Garvin's tale was? His nipples would get hard. Swear to God, man. His nipples would get rock hard. When his nipples got rock hard, man, he was coming to his feet and he's going to beat your ass.
Just a small taste, a sampling, if you will, of what we have waiting for you, with 4 levels to choose from. 4 See for yourself why ad-free shows is the best value in wrestling today. Sign up now, right now, at adfreeshows.com. Yeah.
Let's talk about the next segment here on the show. After that match, where we certainly had some race stuff at hand, then we're going to see James Storm and Chris Harris beat Conan and BG James. But then it's an in-ring interview where Goldilocks is going to interview Kid Cash and Trinity in the middle of the ring. Cash does not like Goldie's line of questioning, so he slaps her. Yeah, Kid Cash slapped Goldilocks on the show. Eric Watts is going to make the save. My goodness, man. Race stuff, hitting girls. This is this Vince Russo trying to push the envelope and let's be edgy and let's do stuff you can't see on TV and let's be the alternative? Or
I gotta look, I don't have specific exact recollections, but I can, and I have heard, bro, it's pay-per-view. You got to do stuff that you can't see on TV. So just what you kind of the topics, when you look at I'll call it the asylum years and the different things we tried, failed on a lot. Some things clicked, some things didn't. But on this, this build up in, June as we approach it, that was pushing the envelope. And as we say on here a few times, it just didn't age well. It just like, did we really get an ROI out of that? I'm not sure.
The main event, of course, is you pinning Glenn Gilberti in 13 minutes and 45 seconds. Russo is going to hit Disco with the baseball bat for the finish. Is it a little predictable? Did you guys ever seriously consider, what if we did put the title on Disco for a minute?
No, I don't think we ever considered it, but we wanted to work a good match. The thing that let me think about an example, because Conrad, we have talked about this over the last couple of years. Like when the public votes on you, they vote on you in a lot of ways, and sometimes it takes. It never turns around. Other times it's a slow process. Sometimes it can, an angle can click. But for the most part, Glenn had been the Disco Inferno for 8 years on WCW, years and years and years. Yeah. So you drill down a small fraction of that audience being the TNA audience. And as much as we were trying, it was, and Glenn's a hell of a worker. I think some people may or may not dispute me, but he's got timing. He's got athleticism, not afraid to be a heel. But it just never got over the hump. So no, Conrad, the answer to your question is I don't think we ever believed that, knowing where we were going. And look, the AJ Styles being the first ever Triple Crown, just the direction of the company. No, we weren't considering that, but it was it was a main event or one of the main events on one of the episodes.
Let's talk about the next week. Mike Tenay is going to interview Disco in the middle of the ring, and he's going to try to explain why Russo hit him with the bat last week. He's going to bring up stories of pretending to like Russo's bad booking ideas in WCW. The crowd starts chanting boring, which maybe throws off Disco's concentration, according to Wade and the Torch. And then Russo charges the ring, hits Disco with the bat again, and yells, "F you, Glenn." Of course, he didn't censor himself. Man, this is another example of that. We're on pay-per-view. I'm curious, is this the time when your dad, or another time when maybe your dad is throwing his hands up like, Jeff, what are we doing?
Yeah.
I mean,
and I would have that. I think so many times language, this is obviously subjective in my personal opinion, but an FU, it just doesn't get over. It doesn't add to the segment. But look, it's not like it's the first time Vince had tried something like that, or wasn't going to be his last, but it wasn't, it just didn't, it's again, trying to do something, whether it's language, the male on female, any of that stuff. But it was trying to do things that you quote unquote wouldn't see on TV.
I actually go the other way with it. I remember really thinking it added to the realism. Not that if you heard it all the time, you wouldn't get desensitized to it. I do agree with that. But I think sprinkled in here or there, it does add to the realism. I mean, I think that's what I always look for as a fan, is the stuff that makes me say, okay, I know it's all just a show, but now this is real. And if you and I had a falling out in real life, which we never will because we're best friends forever, amen, and roll tide. But if we did, I don't think it would be, I am mad at you. I'm going to kick your butt. I do not like you.
Yeah.
Gee willikers. It wouldn't be that. We'd have some foul language going back and forth. So I like it every now and again. And I think AEW at times has done a good job with it. You know, once upon a time, they started letting a word here or there fly. And then maybe they got a little too liberal with it, and it did take away some of the effect. But like at an old ECW show, I'll never forget a promo I heard Shane Douglas cut. I think it was CyberSlam 99. And he just went off on Just Incredible. And it felt real. Now, I don't think he can do that every time, but sprinkled in, I'm for it. And I understand there's a consequence to that if it turns off your advertiser. If it affects your money, you know, if I can say bad words and make less money, or not say bad words and make more money, I'm going to clean myself up. I'm going to censor myself. So I get why, from a businessman standpoint, you would say that. But as a fan, I can say it adds to the realism for me.
You know what Conrad do? I think context is king.
Yes.
And the delivery of the curse word, if you will, or the foul language, I think it has, and I think this is so much in facials, and I think a lot of times I'll call it kind of next level psychology, that I think in 2023, because you can see everything on your phone. It's not like you got to go searching for a curse word. I mean, TikTok, Instagram, I mean, it's everywhere. So I think the people nowadays are so desensitized to it that I think you've got to create a sense of being that the delivery comes in a way that the viewer says, damn, just what you said, Conrad. He's mad and he didn't care to cuss, even though he knows, or will think about it in a few minutes, he has consequences coming.
Right.
Because, you know, we have a language policy at AEW. And I know, you know, you have to with network shows. I mean, there is a language policy. So anyway, we're getting in a rabbit hole. All delivery. To me, it's all delivery. But we're going back to Vince in 2003 saying F you. I just don't think the context was right. It didn't get over.
The main event of this show is building to you defending the NWA title against AJ Styles and Raven in a three-way. And the match ends with Shane Douglas making his TNA debut. He's going to take out Raven, and AJ is going to pin you to win the title after Russo hits you with a guitar. Meltzer's pretty critical. He says the booking is killing the company, but that's been the case on and off since the inception. The whole show was geared around getting Vince Russo over as the top heel, to the point that Glenn Gilberti tried to turn face, but the people shit all over him, talking about insider stuff like Judy Bagwell and David Arquette's title reigns in WCW. Russo hit JArrett with a guitar, so Styles wins the NWA title in 13 minutes and 59 seconds of a three-way involving Raven. Raven was taken out of the match when Shane Douglas debuted and attacked him and threw him out of the building, and Raven was never acknowledged again, even though the match went several more minutes. Russo's idea was for Sabu to be in that role, but JArrett nixed it, saying Sabu had burned the company 3 times already, and they didn't want to start a program having to rely on him. Raven and Russo are still trying to get Sabu in. So much for Russo's compliments about all the tragedies in wrestling, putting his money where his mouth is. JArrett was cut a little from the guitar shot. The crowd popped huge as they badly wanted JArrett to lose, even though the idea was for JArrett to be the face. To get that over, Styles had to back down from a challenge for a rematch, and JArrett picked Sting to be his partner for the anniversary show. And instead of putting Styles over at the finish, it was clear the announcers were instructed to put over Russo, and Russo was the one celebrating with the belt. Of course, last week in the title match, Russo did the same swerve, interfering to help JArrett beat Gilberti. Lot to unpack here. Do you remember nixing the Sabu return?
The Sabu conversation almost from the very, very beginning was, I love him. I saw Sabu in Vegas when we were out there. But it was stutter starts. And I can remember saying, Vince, let's book him, but not book him in the main event. How funny how this is going to roll out. But yeah, I didn't think he fit in this main event on this particular show. But Sabu, and there's a good note coming up in this show, kind of after year one, it was kind of a recap, just all the, not factions, because that feels like an on-screen deal, but our up-and-comers, established stars, an ECW flavor, an independent label, independent wrestling label, all that. But Sabu, to the Asylum fans, they absolutely loved him.
Let's talk a little bit about AJ. This is supposed to be AJ's big moment. As a reminder, this is the first time he's become the top guy. This is the first time he's won the big belt. This is the first time he's become the NWA heavyweight champion, carrying the 10 pounds of gold. And the story's more about Russo. In hindsight, I wish we'd done this a little better, maybe a little differently for AJ. What say you?
That's a two-edged sword, in that AJ, in the first year, there was so many criticism, and again, it's just a different era, because the real time good and bad out of Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and all that instant feedback, but the narrative of, we're not establishing new stars, and Jeff's pushing himself, and they're using old WWF guys or WCW guys or this or that. The reality is, in year one, AJ won every major title, and he became the world heavyweight champion, and Russo, for better or worse, was his manager. So was it too much Russo, or them together as a team was just what Russo needed and AJ needed? Again, subject, it's subjective. I mean, it really is. Could we have slanted it maybe a little more toward AJ? Sure, we could have, but that's not the artistic call we made.
I just, I know that I sound like a super fan here, but I wish for AJ, the focus would have been on, he hit his finish on you, and he's the one to end it, rather than, here comes Russo with a weapon. Yeah. Let's talk about the decision, though, because you said something a little while ago. You said, talking about Glenn, when the public votes, and so they're voting with their wallet, they're voting with their eyeballs by not changing the channel, their wallet with buying tickets, and more importantly, merch, at least in my opinion. And, just the narrative was, maybe we don't see Disco in that light. I get it. But I'm curious how you stay the course here, because your character, the local crowd there in Nashville that sing the show week in, week out, man, they hate you, but you're a babyface, and you continue down that path, even associating yourself with Sting. I don't know anything about this, but I imagine, being a wrestler, it's more fun to be a heel. But I also know, I think back to like the dying days of the AWA, when everybody's going for greener pastures. Vern made Larry the champ because it's his son-in-law. He's not going anywhere. We can trust him. He's going to stick around. Did you think you needed to be the top babyface because you knew you were going to be here even in uncertain times? Or was it a part of a larger plan?
So I'm going to take several steps back. The first answer to your question is yes. I was under contract. There was others that were under. Maybe we might have had a few guys under a year deal by this time. Not many. So certainly you can count on Jeff. He's not going anywhere. He's an owner. But the assumption that, and I'm not exactly sure if that was Wade or Dave, that the fans hate JArrett, I believe is inaccurate. And these guys are still, some of them are still online. The heel faction that was as we walked to the ring right there on the right. So let's say 1,000 fans are in the arena, and let's say 70, 80, I wouldn't go as 100 because the heel faction was really about 30 to 35 guys. So I'm doubling that. But anyway, 50 fans. If 50 fans are booing the crap out of me in a time when the babyface is starting to sell, so they're not on their feet going crazy for a comeback, then I just think Dave and the people that reported to Dave and the people that were more reported to Wade, Vince, Raven, whatever it may be, kind of creating that narrative. Oh, they hated Jarrett in the asylum. I don't ever recall that, Conrad. I don't. And look, that sounds like, oh, he's, whatever, defending or making excuses. The reality is I don't buy that at all. Were there some heel fans? Absolutely.
Yes.
And you could almost look at, this is not a comparison, but there is the Cena situation. Would you say there was a time that everybody in the WWE universe hated Cena?
Never.
I just don't think that's ever existed. Has there been times where it was almost cool to boo Cena? Right. I mean, I think so. And look, we got CM Punk conversation going on right now.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because the thing that tickled me the most in the last few weeks is when people who I guess are CM Punk haters, I don't know, but I started to see people say, oh, he's getting the dreaded Cena reaction. I'm like, dreaded Cena reaction? Are you kidding? Like, he's on the Mount Rushmore of wrestling history as far as money drawn and time on top, blah, blah, blah. What? That is what? I hope every wrestler gets the Cena reaction. We want a reaction, and he gets one, good or bad, right?
I mean, amen. There are folks that I have experienced like, oh my God. And I'm thinking to myself, it is absolutely the best case scenario.
Yes.
He's a lightning rod of emotion, because sometimes there's, okay, and I'm not going to name names because then that gets into a whole nother conversation, but let's just take the top 5 baby faces of any one roster. And you're going to say, yeah, I like this. So he's ranked number 1. I'm going to rank him 2. You know what? 3, 4, and 5 don't really matter. I kind of like them, but they're not my type. Okay. So that's kind of the worst. You don't really give 2 craps about the 3rd, 4th, 5th baby face. Same with the heels. But if you have a guy that you either love or hate,
it's a win.
Cash register, cash register, cash register. It's that simple. I mean, I'm going to go back to the territory days. Lawler and Dundee. Lawler be a heel, Dundee be a babyface. Swap them. Then all of a sudden they'd have babyface matches. At the end of the day, my old man, JArrett, knew that in his territory, that those were the guys that the people were the most emotionally invested with. So let's create stories, protagonists, antagonists, both protagonists, all that kind of stuff. Does it matter? Yes, but it's how you kind of navigate. But on a weekly episodic television show, the Cena effect, are you kidding me? I mean, you look at Undertaker, Austin. I'm just trying to think guys up there at the very, very Shawn Michaels a little bit, but the guys that are tip top.
Hogan. I mean, Hogan started to get booed.
Bingo.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
There are certain towns that cheered Flair, certain towns that booed Flair. The point is they're reacting. And sometimes people get confused and they think, the other side of the coin from love is hate. No, the opposite of love is indifference. Love and hate are the same thing. Creative is subjective, but if we've got a strong emotion one way or another, I mean, look at what Floyd Mayweather did. Like, people bought tickets to see Floyd Mayweather get knocked out. They still bought tickets. They still bought pay-per-view. So whether you're paying to boo or you're paying to cheer, you're paying. See you next week.
And Floyd,
he did okay.
But if you really think about he can talk his ass off. But did you ever say, what a damn boxing?
No.
He
JC said he couldn't bust a grape in a fruit fight. I mean, outside of the cheap shot against Victor Ortiz, that's what that was. And boy, he just routed Ricky Hatton. Outside of that, and I thought Shane Mosley, I was at that fight. I thought Shane Mosley had him rocked early. It never really happened. But like, my parents used to complain when I was a kid that a Mike Tyson fight didn't last long enough. I don't think anybody ever said that about Floyd Mayweather. He's the king of the Iron Man matches.
But defense, boring. But who cares? He already got your money and you're watching, and you're going to come back in 6 months when he fights again, and the next 6 months, and more money. Anyway, it's so going back to this episode that I think
they're cheering, they're booing, they're paying, they're loud, you're happy.
And the guys that were booing me were, that son of a bitch owns it. That whatever the reason may be.
No, I was one of those guys. Like I had decided I hated JArrett. He's the human fast forward button. He sucks, blah, blah, blah. And then I hang out with you and I'm like, okay, now how do I reconcile this? I really like him, but I hated him on TV. And then it's the light bulb goes off like, yeah, that was the idea, stupid. I was supposed to be the bad guy. You hated me. So thanks for buying a ticket and bringing your dad and sitting in the stands. So listen, the big news is you're going to have Sting, and he's going to be returning to American TV. I know he's been on the WWE pay-per-view, WWA pay-per-views, but that's not the same thing. So when you get to announce Sting, boy, is it big. The Torch would say this: Sting is scheduled to work the anniversary show this week, which will be the first time he's appeared on a pay-per-view held in the United States since WCW was sold. Sources report the deal between Sting and TNA was actually struck during last week's pay-per-view as it was on the air. TNA's head of talent relations, Bob Ryder, was said to be on the phone working out the details with Sting during the show, which is why the announcement didn't come until late in the broadcast. It was a case where the announcer really was informed of major news in his headset during the show, rather than just pretending it was breaking news. A member of the TNA production team reports that Mike Tenay was told just a short time before he made the announcement and had to ask the production truck whether to make the announcement right away or wait for a graphic to appear on the screen. Sting is scheduled to team with JArrett in a match against AJ Styles and a mystery partner in the main event of the show. Sting's deal with TNA is believed to be a one-night-only agreement, although the door is certainly open on TNA's end for future dates. So let's remind everybody, this is 2003. We're 2 years removed from WCW going out of business. The invasion angle has come and gone. It was a mess. WWE is shifting gears in 2002. They're actually changing the name of the company to WWE. They're trying to find that next big thing. It looks like Steve Austin is going to be wandering off, and certainly The Rock is going to be going to do movies. Wrestling is in a state of flux. Everybody wants to land this big fish. And somehow, some way, Vince McMahon can't do it. By God, Double J does. How does this deal happen? And is it true that Bob Ryder was negotiating during the middle of the week prior show? How crazy is that?
So, Conrad, can I ask you a question? We're going to have some fun. You're down on the beach.
Yes.
I'm hoping under your desk you may be having, I don't know, maybe a rum drink or maybe
water.
Oh God, you're at the beach, maybe a little pina colada. Well, I'm kidding you. But can I ask you a question? Do you, because I'm, as you know, and these listeners know, I'm not I can't do impersonations, but you're pretty damn good. Do you think you do a better Eric or a better Bruce? I'm hoping Bruce today.
Okay. I mean, I don't know that I do a good Eric or Bruce, but I'll take a stab.
Okay. I'm just going to tell you that paragraph that you just read about Bob Ryder.
Oh God, don't say this.
It is completely fiction.
Yeah. Okay.
So how would Bruce respond if you're Bruce and I'm Conrad and say blah, 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 blah. Hey, so tell me, Bruce.
No, I don't want to do an anti
okay
rant. Like, I hear you though. It's fiction. Okay. So you knew going in, you're going to do it.
So, and I'm going to kind of tip the cat. God rest Bob's soul, but he didn't, however that, I have no idea. But Sting in these, because look, I had worked with him in WCW. We had been around each other a lot in WCW, and we wrestled each other in New Zealand. We wrestled. I mean, we had, since WCW goes anyway. So, but in those early years, Bob Carter and Dixon, but they gave me approval to call Sting and start negotiations and all that. But in those early calls, Sting was like, why don't you tell your dad to give me a call? And they didn't really talk money, but they just kind of talked. I'll just say kind of talked, just a feel good deal kind of conversation. But when we were having the conversations and all that I don't remember exactly. It might have been the day of or the day before that Sting agreed. Yeah, I'll come next week. One shot deal. We'll leave it open. And because that was the kind of running joke from the very beginning. Because Sting, again, he's the franchise player at WCW. At this stage, I would probably say that I don't say he had no interest in going to WWF. That's not true, but he just didn't think it was really in the cards. Didn't really show. Well, I don't think he's really sure where he wanted to take his life. But do I really step back into this pay-per-view only company in the States? Because he agreed to do the Andrew McManus shows. They were out of the country. They were kind of one-offs. There was no binding. He was getting paid great money. It was, in his eyes, maybe an independent more situation. All right, now I'm going to go to work here. The thing that I believe that got Sting to our very first show was one guy, and that's my father. Kind of the emotional heartstrings were tugged in me and Sting's conversation, and he's like, your dad gave me, and he never ever forgot that. The other day we were having a conversation with someone in catering, and Sting looked across the table and said, Jeff's dad gave me like the first start. The guy didn't know it. And he's like, yeah, anyway, Sting's really never forgot that. Kudos to him. And by God, what he did on Dynamite, he's timeless. He's something else, man. Hats off. But
let's keep that tight shot on Jeff here for a minute. Jeff, we're going to see you climb into the top rope and jumping off on any tables anytime soon? Maybe right after you take a Canadian?
That's an inside joke, folks, between me and Conrad that I got to cut my eyes across at him and
just shake his head real subtly.
Conrad,
it will be one of my favorite Jeff Jarrett stories till the end of time. First time the Canadians brought up, I look. Second time the Canadians brought up, we lock eyes immediately. Third time, the Danny DeVito. It is my favorite. It is my favorite gif on Twitter. Just Danny DeVito doing the Jeff Jarrett. Won't be doing that. Listen, it's a big deal to have Sting. I'm glad that Sting is going to be here. Obviously, he wanted to try to pay back. You guys have been working on it for a while. The 1-year anniversary show feels like, the perfect time. Do you wish you would have had more of a runway, or were you good with just this 1 week?
Of course. The thing, and we covered this several episodes again, the first 26 episodes, I'll go into that. Scratching and clawing. We just tried to put on the very best show every week. It was that simple. The Health South in the first 90 days, Lose the Investor, Panda Energy International stepped up. The Carter family stepped up. All right, let's get our kind of footing, if you will. We're going right into the holidays. We had to figure out that holiday schedule and all that. Coming into the new year, we're like, okay, let's we got that budget. We knew that we, all in, the entire company was no more than $100,000. And I think about that, Conrad. We were running the entire operation on less than $100,000 a week. And that's everything. And, the revenue off pay-per-view, and we were starting to get some international stuff. India, Australia. We were working on different things. We had kind of got things, I'll say, semi-manageable. But when we did that JArrett Raven match, and look, again, we couldn't get exact numbers, but we knew it did well. We also knew that, okay, we had to kind of extrapolate. If we're turning away as many people as we could let in the building, that's got to be an indicator. Anyway, I say all that to say that was April. I'm not sure what we did in May, but June, of course, we would have liked to have a 3 or 4 week runway, but we didn't. But we also said on this anniversary, Sting's a huge get. We wanted, and he wanted to kind of feel out, not just me, or I mean, everything about the company. And man, boy, did he get an experience on week one. But so grateful to this day that Sting gave us a chance. And things worked out through the years for us because he was a needle mover off camera for damn sure in our programs as far as gaming and licensing and international deals and all that.
AJ Styles recognizes the opportunity. Of course, this is a big moment for him as well. He's the brand new NWA World Champion, and he does a promo with the website, and he refers to himself as the first ever Triple Crown champion in TNA history. As you'll recall, he was the first X Division champ, then they won the tag titles. Now he's won the world title, and it was a big deal when Shawn Michaels would brag about this on WWE TV. So I like that he's doing the same thing here for TNA. You're going to do some press to promote this 1 year anniversary show, and you're quoted as saying, "People doubted we would last 1 month, let alone 1 year. Not only have we survived, we have succeeded, and we're continuing to go on strong. The Hispanic market is very important to us." This will be the first time, by the way, this 1 year anniversary show that there's a Spanish translation version of the show. Professional wrestling is one of the top television shows for the male Hispanic demographic. As the Hispanic population grows, our show reflects that growth with the number of Hispanic wrestlers we have and the creation of the Spanish broadcast team. What's the long-term plan there? I mean, obviously, having the show in more languages opens up more licensing opportunities internationally. Did you already have something cooking, or is this sort of a necessary first step if you're trying to head that direction?
Even in the early Jay Hosman days, I'll call that, prior to Panda, I mean, startup mode, we had that discussion on the simple ROI, and they were, I say they, in demand, direct, dish, that, there was no real data that they could say, hey, you might want to go ahead and invest in this. Cause it's to talent, and then it's the audio gear. And there is definitely expenses that go along with it, in that we just made the decision, and we wanted it from day one, in demand, direct, dish. We all wanted to do it from day one, and said, okay, let's get our feet up under us. When we talked to our Matthew Odie, our international agent, just like Hindi or French or German, you can always go back and dub, the secondary language, whatever it may be. So we left the audio channels open and chose not to use that expense. And then, like I said, those first 3 to 6 months, just kind of scrambling. Once we got our footing, we knew that we wanted to head in that direction, for several reasons. But at the end of the day, the Hispanic population in the United States, as it relates to professional wrestling, has always big, and it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger.
There's another note from the Torch. The weekly production meetings are being attended by the producers Keith Mitchell and Mike Miller, plus Bob Ryder, Jeremy Borash, Goldilocks, Bill Behrens, Gilberti, Russo, JArrett, Scott D'Amore, and longtime Memphis wrestler Tony Falk. Behrens gives the wrestlers cues on the TNA side, while Falk has been hired to work in the same capacity in the SEX locker room. What's the evolution like? Are you pleased with the evolution from when you first started, what these production meetings would look like, to a year later? There's some new names in here that weren't there at the very beginning.
Yeah, and the two names that are left out are Mike Tenay and Don West.
Okay.
And Mike led the meetings. I'm not sure that I always thought I probably led the first few. I don't know, remember the exact transition, but always, and then certainly I think it's actually before this, but Mike took it over, because if Mike is going to have to explain the show on camera in several hours, then as we go through the production meeting, the announcer or the announcer team, and Keith Mitchell being the executive producer, those two guys are basically in the trench running the show. That they are, in a lot of ways, they are actually the quarterbacks on the field, if you will. And they're thinking through B-roll, and we're going to pitch here, and the timing here, and the referee needs to know this, and the music cue needs going to be this. Just literally every little intricate detail that goes into a live production. And then also, as time grew in Orlando, when we're doing Fox Sports, which is post-production, okay, we don't need to do that. We're going to do that back in the studio, and then live to tape, and just all the iterations that you have to go through on TV. I always thought it was very, very important that Mike and Keith were completely aligned. And I thought, okay, Mike's very articulate. He's thinking these things through. Again, I'm going to go back kind of on that creative nature, that he's going to have to explain this to the wrestling audience, or at least be guided by it. Then let's do an almost dry run through on different things. And I can't tell you how many things through the years, and how many times through the years, just having those two guys hearing the creative, and I'm not saying a creative meeting. I'm just saying what creative's being laid out as it relates to production. And then they would say, now, let me ask you something. How do we want to position this? And that starts a domino effect of discussions. So those early production meetings, when you do a 2-hour live show, a production meeting could and should go rather quickly, because it's 6-7 matches or 8 matches, whatever it may be. There's pre-tapes, maybe a package here and there, and then roll with it. And then when you get into finishes, you're going to have to collaborate with different talent, and this different shot and that different shot. And, as we went along, and that shot that you showed earlier, Marcus, about Sting next week, when you kind of look at how the show evolved from a production standpoint, we got that old asylum looking pretty damn good.
No doubt. We'll actually throw that back up so everybody can see it, that graphic where it announced that Sting was coming. And of course, that leads a lot of people to think, all right, well, the next step, according to Meltzer, here it is. The realization is that the company needs television, and have gone so far as to hire Brian Hughes, the former head of TNN, to open doors for such a deal. If anything, after 1 year, Panda is more enthusiastic about the company than before. Sting's appearance, which can't come cheap, is said to be for multiple appearances. Shane Douglas, who had signed a ridiculous WCW deal, is financially well off, and he commands a significant price to leave home, which is why he's not all over the indie scene. So Brian Hughes, man, this is a big deal. Tell us how that deal came to be.
Brian, former head of, as we discussed here a couple of weeks ago, TNN, which later became Spike. It was the Nashville network, then the National Network, I think, and then TNN. Anyway, they had ECW. They later had the WWF, all that. But Brian ran the network, and a longtime exec in media, different forms, and through a connection was introduced to Dixie, and he came on board. Didn't have, I'm not saying this is 3 strikes, but it's 1.5 strikes. He had no wrestling, some ECW, but he didn't really have any context on it. But a lot of respect for Brian. He dove in and did what he could do. But the reality of the fact was the television market, and that's why things are so different today. Me and you texted about the other day. When WCW went away, the reverberations for the wrestling industry were about as loud and clear. And I don't want to say spook, but I think that's probably the best word, because a network executive has to ask themselves, TBS and TNT just canceled, I'll say a top 5. I may be wrong, top 10, top 5. But anyway, it was certainly, I think Conrad. Anyway, they canceled a top-rated show on TBS and canceled a top-rated show on TNT, it being professional wrestling, and sold a 8-10-year-old company with a lineage of 30 or 40 to their competitor. Man, AL Time Warner, they didn't just throw the towel on professional wrestling. They burnt that son of a gun down and, got the hell out of Dodge. That was tough on the industry.
Let's talk a little bit about where you are here. Even the Torch is saying you've hired a guy to work publicity with the cable networks, and there's a report that you've got a new investment, a new funding commitment from Panda to create a new set. So when you guys are changing things like those sort of one-off expenses, not a weekly building rental or weekly chair rental or weekly security or whatever, but I'm saying like, okay, we're going to build a set. By and large, that's a one-time hard cost. Is that something that's all hands on deck to design? Do you lean into Keith Mitchell's expertise? Who would have helped shape the look and feel of the TNA set as it evolved?
Here's a pretty cool story. Literally, the first show in Huntsville, we used a production company out of Nashville called Scene 3, Mark Ball. But Mark and his team introduced me for the very first time to a gentleman by the name of Greg Horn. Greg was basically a set designer in Nashville, and he created the look for Huntsville, and then Municipal Auditorium, and then, okay, we need to kind of get a few upgrades. Let's kind of try to figure things out. So Greg, by taking a one-off, he's not a full-time employee with Scene 3. He was a contract guy, a vendor, if you will, third party. He took that gig, and all these years later, he's at AEW. So Conrad, in 2002, the set designer Greg Horn took a gig, and he helped us with Ric Flair's last match and all that, based out of Nashville. But anyway, I'll say re-enlisted him, and look, it was a collaborative effort because, standing in that room, you have to have some ideas and, hey, why don't we do this? Why don't we do that? But it was a collaborative effort.
Let's talk about where you are as a company. Meltzer is going to do an assessment where he says TNA has become a unique mix of indie guys that WWE felt were too small. And he makes a list. Guys like Low Key, Christopher Daniels, Elix Skipper, The Amazing Red, Kid Cash, Paul London, Kazarian. And then there's a bunch of big names from the WWE that maybe they got rid of or never wanted, like BG James, Sean Waltman, Jerry Lynn, Brian Lawler, Conan, Raven, Justin Credible, and D'Lo Brown. Then there's what he calls the Russo clique, which is Sanders, Watts, Saturn, and Gilberti. The ECW legends like Sandman and New Jack. And then some local guys who originally just got booked because they were close and there was a sort of minuscule budget at times. But now they've managed to get over and build a reputation for themselves. Guys like Chris Harris and James Storm. And then, of course, he even mentions that you've had a bunch of different legends, but none have really stuck around, whether it's Steamboat or Armstrong or Harley or JJ or Zabisco or Dusty Rhodes. It's a little bit of everything. And I don't know that was ever laid out as well as Meltzer did right there, because you need some name value for the casuals. You need to show them something they've never seen before with guys who were, quote unquote, good enough to be on WWE, but they just don't check a box for them, like, a Paul London at the time or Low Key or what have you. And then, you've also got the legends and the locals. This is the way a company should be formed here, right? There's something for everybody.
We tried. And,
yeah.
When I read that paragraph, same thing, that I'm like, oh, Uncle Dave kind of crafted some words, and he loved to create noise. And I'm not going to say knock us, but sometimes he, rarely did he give us flowers, and I'm not saying that we deserved it, but kind of that encapsulation, year one, was really who we were. We were finding our way, and in so many ways, not just financially, creatively, I just think, Conrad, too, I'm 35 years old. Just, how many mistakes, how many screw ups. But at the end of the day, kind of the creative vibe, and you just put it in a couple of different buckets for a startup promotion. And that's the thing that I think, well, me and you've talked about. It's just to start up any business. And I know there's a crazy stat out there about, what is it? 1 in, I don't know, that actually make it. It's not easy. But from Bob Carter, Dixie Carter, I mean, just kind of, we will throw Russo and Raven and me and AJ Styles. I mean, just a whole collective hodgepodge of behind the screens, Jeremy Borash, all the different key things that, hey, TNA LOL, that the last few years it created in this startup phase, we didn't do everything right, but man, we were putting our best foot forward and we were making progress, no matter how you slice and dice it.
20% of new businesses don't make it a year. And over 50% of new businesses don't make it 5 years. So to make it year one, it's sort of like musical chairs. Oh, we made it. And the hope is, can we chug and make it 5 years? And along the way, Meltzer would write, there's been a lot of bright spots, like Raven, he writes here, who WWE did nothing with, proved himself a genuine draw in the company's best ever build. Mike TNA, who WWE showed no interest in, was voted Announcer of the Year last year by the readers of this publication. AJ Styles has proven to be one of the best new talents in the game. So here it comes, just rapid fire. Hey, for all the negativity, for all the, boy, I wish they had this, and I wish they wouldn't have done that, and this creative, that creative. There's a lot of good stuff here. And that's probably makes guys in your locker room, I know you pay this sort of thing no mind, what the Torch and the Observer say. However, I would be willing to bet that there were some people who were like pretty proud to get a pat on the head from Uncle Dave here a little bit. An acknowledgement that, hey, it ain't all bad.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the fact that, and again, I wasn't in their weekly reading, but there were obviously a lot. And every week you would hear some kind of blurb, but I'm not saying from Dave or Wade, but there would be some type of, did you hear they're closing next week? Did you hear this guy will not be there because he's not, whatever it may be? There was always that ultra negative, condescending crap that all of a sudden, oh, wow, you're there a year? Huh, that's interesting. You guys are, that type deal. So, Father Time is undefeated.
Yes, he is.
You stick around long enough, he wins.
Well, but what we're trying to do is turn that clock back. And I'm not saying necessarily you need abs like Jeff Jarrett's, but maybe you want a ding dong that's half as hard. And BlueChew.com can help. It's like a guitar shot to the head. As Blue Chew is a unique online service that delivers the same active ingredients as Viagra, Cialis, and Levitra, but in chewable form and at a fraction of the cost. Take them anytime, day or night, so you can plan ahead or be ready whenever an opportunity arises. And the process is so simple, folks. You just sign up at BlueChew.com. You consult with one of their licensed medical providers. And once you're approved, you'll receive your prescription within days. And here's the best part. It's all done online. So no visits to the doctor's office, no awkward conversation, no waiting in line at the pharmacy. Blue Chew's tablets are made in the USA, prepared and shipped directly to your door, all in a discreet package. But there won't be anything discreet about your package. Blue Chew wants to help you have better sex. Discover your options at BlueChew.com. Chew it and do it. And we got a special deal for our listeners. Try Blue Chew free when you use our promo code MyWorld at checkout. Just pay $5 shipping. That's BlueChew.com. The promo code is MyWorld, and you'll receive your first month free. Visit BlueChew.com for more details and important safety information. And we want to thank Blue Chew for sponsoring today's podcast and Jeff Sweener. So, Jeff, let's talk about the booking here for a minute. It's written in the Observer that at times it looked like you could tell according to Dave, when Jerry was booking, and it made more sense. But maybe it would have required a little more patience. But for whatever reason, the folks in Dallas at Panda were always sold and committed on giving Vince Russo this opportunity. And Meltzer would basically say he's a good enough salesperson to get himself a $530,000 a year job from WCW, even though he doesn't know a hill of beans about in-ring stuff. I'm curious from your perspective, do you think you could have or would have or should have made it a year without Russo's booking? If you had just done what Jeff and Jerry wanted to do, could that have made it a year, or was Russo necessary just to keep this train on the tracks?
So here's what's kind of amazing. I'll just say this. Conrad, I don't know how many hours of podcasting you've done, but I'm just going to say collectively, all the research, Bruce, which you covered some TNA time, Eric, you covered some TNA time, JR, I don't think really, Tony, well, I don't know. Anyway, you've done a lot of TNA podcasts, which makes you have to go down different rabbit holes of research. And the reality of the situation is you have your Russo just haters, and then you have his supporters. And then you have on the other side of the fence, if Jerry would have had the book that first year or whatever it may be. And you just said right then, if Jeff and Jerry had been okay. And look, my whole time there, we go into in detail, 2002 to 2013, all the ups and downs. Conrad, the real reality of this situation was just like I wanted Russo and Jim Cornette to work together. Oh, that'll never work. Or Russo and Dutch to get in the same room. I'm ultimately responsible for the good or bad. Love me or hate me. Year one was by design. I'm going to take a little bit of Vince and a little bit of Jerry. And maybe next week I'm going to take a lot of Jerry and less, it's all that. So could we have made it without Russo year one? Absolutely, we could have. Could we have made it without JArrett year one and all Russo? Absolutely, we could have. That's only my opinion. That's subjective. At the end of the day, I ultimately said this week we're going with these ideas, and next week. So all the screw ups or the successes, ultimately, you got to kind of throw in my lap by design, because I don't think I would say I ever approved everything. I certainly wouldn't approve Vince, not because I'm against foul language, but the FU didn't fit in that segment, or that racial overtone, or not bringing Sabu in, or what, just all the ins and outs. But ultimately, I'm responsible for it, or was responsible for it. So yeah, we could have easily.
Let me say this. You've changed my fandom, and we've talked about this a lot off air. When you said creative is subjective, I was able to apply that to stuff my dad taught me about sales as a kid and all that. I guess what I was trying to ask, and maybe I didn't do the best job of conveying it, was Russo critical to the continued relationship with Panda? Had that relationship become more political? It's written in the Observer that Panda was sold on Russo. And I know at times, whereas maybe guys can subscribe to some tribalism, I know you don't do that. You're like, hey man, it takes a team. Let's all work together and make this thing better. I know that's your approach. But at that point, for this to make the Observer, it makes me say to myself, was Russo already trying to spend a little more time politicking, if you will, with the Panda folks than maybe your dad was?
Like 1,000%. We believed verbatim what was told to us, and I'll just say kind of collectively from Dallas. Right. Big issue. We believe, okay, Dallas. I'll never forget the words I said many times. Jeff, you do the wrestling. We're going to do the legal and finance.
Right.
And when she said, when Janice said wrestling, that was marketing and production, and she meant that. But we're going to do legal and finance, and we're going to, the business operations and all that. I believe that wholeheartedly. As time went along, and I get this, Vince is wanting to feed his family and do what he thinks is best. And Dixie Carter being inquisitive, and rightly so, and asking questions and all that. Through that process, I think you just kind of said that, but Vince, maybe not by design from the beginning, but selling himself to Dallas at the same time, the inexperience of the Carter family of truly reading and understanding kind of what we talked about on the CM Punk or the Cena thing. Oh no, that's a bad thing. They're booing our top babyface. Oh no. It's a great thing. It's a great thing. Trust me, it's a great thing. Oh, well, that's kind of hard to understand year one from business folks. So kind of the lack of understanding on a deep level of the wrestling industry, and Vince answering questions. I'd give anything. And I think I told that Vince many, many times, Vince, if there's a question you don't want to answer, you can diplomatically say, I'd rather not answer that. And I know he did that on some occasions, but hey, defer, because you're creating me more problems, because all of a sudden everything I'm doing is being second guessed. And there came a time, as time went along, everything I did was second guessed, and that was detrimental to the company, period.
I know your dad even wrote, when you guys first launched this company, the idea is we had to establish you as the top star, not necessarily because this was a promotion designed to get you over the way the haters may say online, but simply because we could control the variables. You're not going anywhere. You're hunkered down. So you're more than just a talent. That makes total sense to me. However, I do want to point out that the naysayers, maybe other wrestlers, would say that the word, or at least Meltzer would write, the word he heard most from wrestlers in the locker room was the word frustration. And there was a perceived glass ceiling, like they could never really be the top guy as long as you were wearing both hats. And even if you go back to, say, the critics of Dusty Rhodes and Jim Crockett Promotions, they would say, well, you can't have a guy who's on the show and a booker. We've heard recent conversation about that a handful of years ago with the EVPs and AEW and all that jazz. And now you're trying to make it work almost out of necessity. And I just want to point out that this is your primary income. It's not like you moonlight in the wrestling business and you're also a data scientist or city engineer. This is it. So you're trying to squeeze out profit. And we're trying to see what works and what doesn't work. And here's something I thought that just jumped off the page in the Observer. When the JArrett Raven formula worked, which was a 4 or 5 week hard build for one day and one match, it signaled something. Their business is no different from old time wrestling. It was one match, but with weeks of hype. The one match, just a wrestling match, meant more than the girls losing their tops, endless insider interviews, and debates that the live audience shit on. Since that time, after finding a working formula, there have been weeks where not one match is announced the week before. No match has been given more than a week's direct buildup. And even the appearance of Sting, which should have been promoted for a month at least, only had a 1 week build, and the jury is out on how much it will matter. At this point, there's believed to be 30,000 people who are in the universe that on occasion order the shows. It's believed to be bottoming out around 7,500 buys on bad weeks. There was a surge, and they seem to consistently be hitting 13,000. But allegedly, 20,000 people bought you and Raven, and that had to be almost like a eureka moment where I would imagine a guy like your dad was like, damn it, Jeff, the data says we've been overthinking this. We thought we had to have crazy, high-flying, crash TV. What will they do next week? You guys build this Raven JArrett storyline, which we covered in the archives. At that time, sets a pay-per-view record for y'all. Man, the same thing that has always worked in wrestling still works. It's all about story. Ta-da. Isn't that crazy?
Oh God. These are the kind of, as you were sitting there saying all that, I'm thinking to myself, simple. The old, KISS method. Keep it simple, stupid. Yes, Conrad, it is. And I will say, and I've said this over and over and over, Russo is a writer of television. There's a difference between a writer and a booker. And when you lean too far on the writing, you get in the situation where nothing is announced for the following week. When you lean too far in the booking and you just book and here's 6 matches next week, well, then there's no story.
Right.
It's finding that balance. It's truly easier said than done, but it really is finding the balance.
Let's talk about how you found a spot for Frank Romano, formerly of In Demand. Now he's going to be announced as being the new chief operating officer. Talk to me about Frank, and I guess you're going to open up new offices, according to the Observer, here in Manhattan. Like, the idea that you had a Manhattan office is like, wait, what?
So, I mean, we're going to be a big office, but this is something that, gosh, Conrad, you know, when you're around, I'll just say, elder statesmen, business folks, that you just look at them and know they've been up and down so many damn mountains that and they've got success to prove it. Bob Carter came to a point in that he had wrapped his head around enough of the, we'll call it the rolling 90 days of pay-per-view world, that you have 4 weekly shows in a month, but on an accounting system that reports monthly, but they don't pay until 90 days later, because you watch it on the 15th of July. Your cable bill comes on August 1. You got 30 days to pay that, which gets you to September 1. They got to give you a grace period for late. So, you know, now you're October 1. So that show you worked on July 15th, you're really not going to see that money at the earliest till October 1. And I'm trying to give a little crash course. When you put all that together, you go, hell, these guys are trying to make the best decision, but the data they're getting back is a little difficult. We need somebody to get in there and roll up their sleeves and try to figure out this process. So what Bob Carter do? Let's go hire somebody who really knows this business. This Hassman character who purported and blah, blah, he learned of that. Frank was working at In Demand, and that was a call that was told to me that, hey, what do you think about Frank Romano? Next thing you know, Bob, through attorneys, hired him. Hats off to the Wildcatter. He said, all right, I'm going to find somebody who knows the pay-per-view industry and could make us more favorable deals, dealt with just anything and everything in the pay-per-view industry. That's how it happened.
We're finally here. Let's talk about the anniversary show. Meltzer would say the NWA TNA anniversary show kind of epitomized the first year of the promotion. At times it was very good. At other times it was very bad. The anniversary show, which was hyped more than a month in Nashville, and it was the first show where they didn't comp most of the building, had a paid attendance close to 1,000, which would be the most paid ever. But it's got to be an embarrassment that the company couldn't even sell out the tiny fairgrounds. It's a reality that while they draw enthusiastic crowds, their product doesn't appeal to enough people at this point. Now, listen, normally I would say, yeah, whatever, we're selling pay-per-view. However, man, this is the first time these folks would have been able to see Sting. And Sting didn't sell out the fairgrounds. That to me is just crazy. I mean, 5 years ago, Nick Aldis and Cody Rhodes set an all-time attendance record there. Again, with no TV, just fresh off of All In, a few months removed from All In. But how in the world, man, Sting didn't lead to a sellout? What is that? What lesson can we take from that? Is there a teachable moment in that? Like, this is a brand that was established in Tennessee. It's a Nashville-based thing. We're a year in. Have we just given them too much and we just sort of dismiss it? Is there a takeaway? Like, Sting, man.
I think there's a great takeaway. So who promoted that Cody Aldis show?
I don't know who the local promoters was, but it was NWA 70 or NWA 75 or whatever it was.
Me.
Oh, there you go. Ta-da. Yeah, I remember we had talks about that. Yeah.
No, so the difference, it's great. What year would that have been?
2018.
Okay, 2018. And now
15 years later.
yeah, okay. It is, I don't say so simple, but, and you have done in your business, I'll go a little bit old school, Nashville, Huntsville, Chattanooga, kind of in that 3-city triangle and all that. You have probably done a lot of radio. I don't know how much TV you've done, but you know, you're getting on the radio and you're talking about, you know, First Family Mortgage, and there's no really timestamp. Come by Monday through Friday, 8 to 6 or whatever it may be. And I'm open on Saturday, whatever it may be. In the wrestling industry, it's an event promotion. Okay. When you sell radio or even TV, it's messaging. How do you get the word out? Period. To Sting is going to be there this Wednesday. So we had basically a 7-day window to get this out with a limited budget and no social media.
So you tried to buy last minute ads on Monday Night Raw. I mean, that's pretty much all you could do. And you had to hurry to do that, right? Like you'd have to have the creative in Friday morning.
Incredibly expensive in those days. I mean, but I say all that to say the NWA 70, Billy Corgan, Cody, Aldis, when we put tickets on sale and they went that quick, Conrad, when I tell you I had vivid memories of the Asylum shows, and I'm like, praise the Lord for Facebook.
Yeah, no kidding.
I mean, it was that target of audience, because in these days, and look, Sting not selling out again, I'm going to go ahead and say that's a little bit of wordsmithing. Marcus, pop that picture back out, and there, and audio only folks, you couldn't get any more people. I mean, we had a complete full house. It was packed, and here's kind of the reality, Conrad. So that's, I mean, look, would you call that 90% full or 95% full or 100% full?
If Ricky Morton was here, he'd say they were hanging from the rafters.
Okay, well said. My point being is that we had some folks that came every week that didn't mind standing by the concession stand. They're going to get their cold beverage or standing in the aisles. They weren't necessarily hell-bent on sitting ringside. So the show started at 7. Dark match started at 6:30. JB cranked up his videos at about 6:20, 25. At about 7 o'clock, not saying that we keep selling tickets, those folks they're going to wait us out. And so when the line went down, they're just going to wait us out because we had papered the town. I'm sure we let some folks in, and then Meltzer and Keller are going to say, it didn't sell out. I'm not so sure that's exactly accurate. We were very, very happy with the very happy with the event. He sold. He didn't sell out. Well, what's the definition? I don't know.
Well, and let's just remind everybody, at the end of the day, I don't know what tickets are. Okay. Let's just say they're $20 for the bleacher seats. If you sold an extra 200,
that's my point.
What are we talking about? It's not a substantial amount of money, no matter what.
Yes.
The goal is we need Sting for pay-per-view. We don't need Sting to clear these other 178 empty seats out.
That's right.
Let's talk about the actual pay-per-view, because what a show it is, man. It's the best of times and the worst of times. Frankie Kazarian, who we both think a lot of, Sandman, who I think everybody in that era remembers fondly from his entrance, and D'Lo Brown, not too far removed from WWF TV. They're going to form a 6-man tag to take on Sonny Siaki, David Young, and Don Harris. It goes 3 minutes and 53 seconds. Kazarian looks fantastic. Sandman never wrestled, which Wade says was actually for the better. And the post-match would see Siaki, DDT, Sandman, and then Ron Harris and Mike Sanders run in. And this is set up for JArrett and Sting running in for the big pop to establish JArrett as a babyface to the crowd. So listen, we've got a lot of great talent, some recognizable stars like Sandman and D'Lo Brown, and certainly some up-and-comers that we're going to lean into. We're really hopeful for Sonny Siaki and Frankie Kazarian. And then here comes our baby faces. We're setting the tone. And then we get a 20-minute long Vince Russo segment, a 20-minute long interview, which Meltzer would say, or Wade would say, was far longer than what was scheduled and it actually forced a cancellation of a catfight segment, which was supposed to be here, and it shortened several matches later in the show. The idea here is Mike Tenay's yelling at AJ Styles. Brown is going to yell at Styles to confront Russo, or Russo talks about how Vince McMahon never cared about D'Lo. And then Raven runs in as a face. Shane Douglas is going to lay out Raven with a belly to belly. But apparently there's a lot of quote unquote heat, brother, on Russo for this promo. I guess the thinking is that he quote unquote went into business for himself. And I guess nobody was really happy with his performance, but an anniversary show, and it's a 20-minute segment. Did he not have proper support? Did he just have an off night? Was this the way it was supposed to be? What do you recall?
I don't recall that, but a 20-minute out of a 2-hour show.
That's a lot, man.
That's insanity. I'm going to guess that it happens to lots of folks.
Yes.
That try to produce themselves. And I've been victim of that, or guilty of that myself. It's a death knell. It is an absolute, and you see it day in and day out. To me, even today, you can watch, and I'm not going to say it's WWE or AEW, but you can watch certain programming and kind of get that vibe. Ooh, that might not have been the best decision.
You know, I'm glad you said that, because you and I've had that conversation a lot off air. I don't think we've ever talked about it on air, but even when we were doing Ric Flair's last match, here I am. I don't know. I've never done any of this. I'm way out of my comfort zone. And you sort of said, hey, produce me. What do you think? Do you like it better this way? Do you like it better that way? And I'm like, Jeff, I don't know. You do this more than me. And you go, no, I do better with being produced. Tell me what you think as a fan would look better, blah, blah, blah. And we've both seen segments that happen on television, whether it's Impact or it's AEW or it's WWE, whatever, where you and I, who sometimes we will text each other during shows, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? We're wrestling buddies like that. We've both seen segments where we're like, I know that Vince Russo hates when people say, oh, Vince McMahon was his filter. But to me, that's discounting the filter. You could have this great idea, but you need someone to help make that great idea as good as it can be. And sometimes that does mean trimming the fat a little bit here or there. So I think you're onto something. When someone produces themselves, they do have a tendency to go too long and maybe get a little too willy-nilly. Having someone there to just critique and help them along helps their performance be better, no matter what their level of experience is. It can be a little tighter. It can be a little better. I know creative is subjective, but the clock is not. 20 minutes represents 1/6 of the show. So you have now just carved off 1/6 of the show. And as we like to say here in the South, shit rolls downhill. Everything that comes after you has to change now.
Yes.
Because maybe someone wasn't producing you. That's a real teachable moment here. And it happens to be on maybe the biggest show in TNA history at this point.
And that's the thing that, you know, and I know sometimes backstage, oftentimes, but they're like, Jeff, he's off his rocker. Why is he so uptight? Why is this? Why is that? Why is he on eggs? It's 10 minutes before the showtime, and he all this. It's these kind of experiences that I went through as an executive producer that, you know, that in a 2-hour show, one segment goes too long or distasteful, or a bad match, or even a bad couple of spots within a match. You just said it in the South. Once it starts rolling downhill, that all-important if it goes the wrong way, sometimes you just can't get that toothpaste back in that. It stinks up the whole thing, and it's so disheartening because there's so much work that goes into, let's keep the train on the tracks, let's have a great show, and, man, you get a derail. Oh, God almighty, I would get so frustrated from time to time. And I'm sure I was this night. And look, we're about to get into the main event and the juggles and everything that was going on. But the wrestling business can be stressful at times, Gani. I just say that.
I mean, and check this out. From a timing standpoint, the first match, which is a 6-man tag, process this now, folks. It's a 6-man tag. They get 3 minutes and 53 seconds. Next up, we've got Chris Sabin and Paul London. And after that, we've got New Jack and Mike Sanders. Saban and Paul London get 7:53. New Jack and Sanders get 5:33. Just Incredible and Jerry Lynn get 2 minutes and 33 seconds. Suzuki and Perry Saturn get 4 minutes and 35 seconds. I'm just trying to give you these match times so you can understand how many of those we could have fit in a 20-minute segment.
Bingo.
When one goes long, everybody, do you think the original plan was Just Incredible and Jerry Lynn to go 2:43? Probably not. This is a weapons match with New Jack and Mike Sanders. It's a hard 10 match. Like, do we think they're just going to get 5 minutes? Probably not.
Nope.
And we knew we had to be tight because we started the doggone show with a 6-man that doesn't go 6 minutes.
Yes.
So we had a nice plan, and now whew, there goes the format. We got to call it on the fly. It's a great match though with Saban and Paul London. It's for the X title, 7 minutes and 53 seconds. CM Punk is going to interfere here in DDT Paul London. And it's written here, Punk is doing a total Raven copy gimmick. London has some amazing athletic moves, and Saban is right there with him. The crowd loved the match as well. London still needs work on his transition between moves, as he looks super on the indie scene. But when you see him on a WWE show, the weaknesses are more apparent. 3.25 stars. Listen, the CM Punk Raven thing, I was first introduced to their promos and their feud from Ring of Honor. But given the idea that, you know, CM Punk is doing his straight edge character in a major way, that was a much bigger part of his persona back then. Not saying he still doesn't have that lifestyle, just saying he was really leaning into it heavily there. It lent itself to him being natural foes with guys like Raven. What did you see as the potential upside of CM Punk, and did you think he would get the story part of the business?
The unique charisma. And you look, it wasn't a long thought out vision and everything that went out. There were so many guys that were coming in that they were getting opportunities, and the ebb and flow, and whether they had Japan dates or even financial or other independent dates or whatever it may be. But the unique charisma, you know, you look at that picture of him that we flashed on our YouTube. He had a unique look and straight edge lifestyle, everything that went with it. And Conrad, if you'll notice behind him, I don't know if you see the guys in the black shirts, heel section. There's your JArrett haters.
Yes. Well, next up, we got New Jack and Mike Sanders, largely a waste, according to the Observer. But we use a giant Hulk hand, which is kind of fun. So New Jack wins with the help of a giant Hulk hand. That becomes a part of a gimmick with New Jack and Shark Boy. Who would have thought that would be a thing?
Oh, it got over. It's comedy, but it's great.
Of course.
New Jack was phenomenal with Shark Boy.
Hey, this is Missy Hyatt, the Walking Riot, and I say that you need to save with Conrad. Jim Ross told me, you need to go with Conrad. He'll save you money. And he did. Well, it was a refinance because I owned the house, but I owned the house with my 2 siblings and I was buying them out. So now they're out of there and I've got the house. And I paid off my Jeep. I got my bathroom redone, the master bath redone, and paid off some credit cards. And it was like the cat's pajamas. I just liked it that everybody knew what they were doing. And if I had a question, it was answered. Yeah, you guys helped me out great. And when I refinanced it and paid off everything and paid off my Jeep and did my bathroom, and I think my payment was only $8 more a month, I probably saved at least over $30,000. It was exciting. I mean, this is the first house I've ever purchased by myself. They make everything so easy for you, and you don't have to think about anything, and they'll get it all done. Go to Save with Conrad if you want to refi your mortgage or anything with your mortgage. Just go to Save with Conrad.
Just Incredible and Jerry Lynn go 2 minutes and 43 seconds. Quote, what they did was very good until the lame finish. On a big show, this was an insult, and the crowd took it that way with loud bullshit chants after the finish. These two should have had a great match, and people were expecting it, remembering their ECW bouts. Even the post-match pull-apart couldn't save it. This is certainly a victim to running short on time in the show, is it not?
Yeah, and I wanted to did we work I don't say a long term, but a 3 or 4 week program? We'll answer that on other episodes. But I know that they were a victim of it, but the post match stuff was a build up to where we were going. I think that was kind of the direction creative we were going with those guys.
Next up, we got Kenzo Suzuki going to a no contest with Perry Saturn in 4 minutes and 35 seconds. Meltzer would say, here's a funny story. The booked finish for this was Saturn to win clean, since he works here regularly and Suzuki will never be back. Anyway, knowing this, I did a preview of the show that morning and said that Hattori was going to come in and demand the finish would be changed. Anyone who understands the first thing about Japanese wrestling politics knows Suzuki being groomed to be a top star means that, that's going to be tough. Apparently nobody in TNA had a clue, and they were shocked when hours later Hattori showed up and explained Suzuki couldn't do the job, so they ran in Lynn Incredible. The match was sloppy. Is this real? You guys wanted Saturn to go over? Little wrestling politics pop up? Can't do that?
I have zero recollection, but it doesn't surprise me. I wish I could recall how Suzuki got booked on the show, how all that went down. I wish I don't have a good recollection on this one.
Next up, and what a match this was. They said it was the best match on the card, 3.5 stars. Christopher Daniels and Elix Skipper are going to retain their tag straps over Chris Harris and James Storm. They get 7 minutes and 3 seconds. Skipper's going to pin Harris after a belt shot. Meltzer would say the match was rushed, but it was still the best thing on the show. They did a swerve, which was the old Pennywise and Pound Foolish mentality. Daniels got on the house mic and said he's going to Japan in 2 weeks. That was scripted because they want people to think it would be a title change so they could swerve everyone. However, after the match, a challenge was issued for a rematch in a cage for the belts. And since it's already established it's Daniels' last match, their swerve ultimately works against them. That's interesting. What do you think of that? Like, I understand trying to not make it obvious right up front, but if you're going to announce a rematch next week, and we know he's leaving in 2 weeks, or are you saying, well, heels lie, Conrad? Don't overthink this.
Two sides. I mean, I can argue both sides. I mean, I really could.
Okay.
Is it too inside?
Still,
go ahead.
That cage match that they're teasing here, I just want to remind everybody, this is going to go on to become one of the greatest tag team matches in TNA or wrestling history. And it really builds on what America's Most Wanted and Triple X would become. But we start all that on this 1 year anniversary show. So the idea here is to leave this building to something else. Well, this doesn't.
And this is so early in there. I mean, this is, are they even called America's Most Wanted yet?
No, you guys are not letting them do that yet. They've put AMW on their tights, but you've said, hey, that's a show on Fox. We can't do blah, blah, blah.
We're not even there yet. That's what I thought. And Triple X, yeah. But because the cage match they had is the 4-sided ring that will happen. I don't know how many they had of those, but it was good. But the 6-sided cage, once we got to Orlando, is what, 2 years later? 3 years later?
Yeah, it's a couple years later. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying is. So this is how long, but man, those guys had great chemistry. And my man Elix was right in the middle of it. Great chemistry.
JArrett is going to appear on the show for the first time. This is the first time we've seen him like this, and he's going to talk about it being a tough first year. And Meltzer would say he seemed to be building himself up to be attacked by Russo to get Jeff over, since he talked about how Russo couldn't handle failing in WCW and he had unhealthy obsessions. That's a backstage interview, but out in front of the crowd, Eric Watts comes out and complains about company politics. And he says, Eric is coming. He calls out Kid Cash, who Wade would say, came up to Eric Watts' navel. Watts was about to kill him when his supposed lover Goldilocks was caught in a cage with Eric Justice, Abyss in Puerto Rico, doing a Mankind gimmick, who at this point was only known as Scary Dude. She got some hair extensions cut and was screaming. Watts dropped Murdering Cash. He was bragging about how he beats up women to save Goldie, but she was locked in and he couldn't save her. So Cash jumped Watts and they cut away from the segment while it was still going on, and it was never referred to again, thus killing its impact. Of course, we know this Eric is Eric Justice, who we know will eventually become Abyss. But how about that, man? The 1-year anniversary show. I don't know if you saw, but this morning as we're recording, people started to float out there the Mount Rushmore of TNA. And I think Rich Swann weighed in and he had a vote. And I thought, and by the way, shout out to Rich. Everybody's entitled to their opinion. But he had some names on there, and I thought, wait a minute. How can we do a Mount Rushmore for TNA without Kurt Angle? Kurt wasn't on it. You weren't on it. And I would argue, I don't know that you could do it without Abyss either. Now, that's where it gets tricky. Like that last spot, I think everybody knows, well, that's got to be AJ's. But if you do that, then you leave Samoa Joe off. Like, I know that would be incredibly hard for you to do, and I know what you would do. You'd say, oh, pull me off and slide those guys on there. But it's interesting to think here at the 1-year anniversary, we're ready for what's going to become, well, I guess it's a popular word in AEW these days, another pillar for TNA and Abyss. How about that?
And I don't remember him being called Eric Justice. I thought it was Chris Justice, his real name being Chris Bart, but he was in Huntsville. He was on the very first show. And so Dutch saw him. He went to Puerto Rico. I don't know the exact timing, but he had worked in Puerto Rico for a year, and they had built him in so many ways, you know, working 5 nights a week. They did TVs on Wednesdays, worked Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday most weeks. So Abyss had been in storylines and angles and understood the character. And so for him to be coming, I'll call it back home, but you know, debuting and getting it integrated, I always thought it was originally Chris Justice or Chris Abyss, or I just kind of the transition. But yeah, he's definitely a pillar. That Mount Rushmore question, it circles around every so often. It feels like about every June, but yeah, you got to put Abyss on there. I think
He's got to be, right? I mean, I think Abyss, AJ, Kurt Angle. I mean, those are no doubt.
Yeah. I mean, and I know, I guess if you have to say 4, but AJ, Sting, Kurt, Abyss was there from, so now 2003. Yeah, you gotta.
I didn't even have Sting on there, but you're right. Like, we gotta have more spots on that. I don't think I can narrow that down to 4.
Yeah, but Sting, just like I said, and look, no, I don't even think people can debate it. But being in the business side of things, you have him, yeah, both.
Yeah. All right, well, let's talk about him. It's all about Sting here. Meltzer would write, it was more impressive than it looked that Sting's first match back turned out so well. The lesson of never say never came up once again. The original plan for the main event was supposed to be AJ and Raven against Sting and JArrett. Raven talked his way out of it with the idea it would confuse the issue, since Raven is actually the biggest face in the company. Plus, Raven got screwed by Russo, so it would make no sense to team with a Russo guy. So Sean Waltman was going to be brought in, and a few days before the show, that idea was dropped when Jeff Hardy was going to be the mystery partner, which also made little sense because Hardy is a total babyface. But that fell through, and they went back to Waltman. Even though Waltman left rather publicly because of his dislike for Russo, and it was talked about on TV, money is money, and he was asked to come back. Instead of following up on the thing, which wouldn't even be an insider angle since they had pushed it on TV, as Russo wouldn't shut up about it, they brought Waltman back to learn to team with Russo, because if it didn't make sense, we will book it. So listen, that doesn't make sense that he's going to be on that side of things, since they had their big falling out. As you always say, creative is subjective, so we won't get too tripped up there. And I'll instead read this report from Dave. Waltman had quite the trip. He came to Nashville with fiancée Joni Lauer, we know her as China, the night before the show. because after his no-show a few weeks back, the company wanted an assurance he'd be there. So he was there, but then the night of the show, he never arrived. He wound up getting to the building about 15 minutes before the match was to start, with he and Joni being described as looking, as in their dress and demeanor, like two people who just got out of a rave at 5 a.m. He also didn't have his gear with him, nor did he have time to change into it. So he worked the match in his rave clothes. He has enough instinctive talent that while not physically looking good, his ring work helped carry the match. Buddy, you want to talk about stress. I can't wait to get this story from your perspective. Let's start at the beginning. Do you remember the original idea being Raven? Do you remember it being offered to Jeff Hardy? And do you remember why that didn't work out? And then what can you tell me about this report that Waltman shows up just minutes before the match is supposed to happen?
Okay, so Raven, tip top of the card, but I think we all collectively agreed if we got Sting and JArrett, he doesn't need to be with us, but he also doesn't need to be with the Russo guy. So it kind of by deduction, and you know, he agreed. Everyone agreed. Okay, that doesn't really fit. So, but on the flip side, who are we going to get? Who are the opponents? The Jeff Hardy straight babyface. We had been, I say we, probably me, but you know, as a company, we'll say that we had begun to have conversations, but didn't know it was just too premature. But it also was going to be a tough fit. So Waltman was, we don't want to say the perfect guy, but we thought it would be, okay, we switched the title the week before to AJ. He needs a high quality, high profile partner, but who are we going to get? Well, Waltman kind of checked all those boxes, and we thought, okay, everything's fine. It's going to work. No big deal. Stress, Conrad. It's not even, it's kind of an understatement because of all the obvious factors. Anniversary show.
Yep.
Panda.
Yep.
We needed a good surprise that the audience would be receptive to.
Yep.
And I'm saying behind closed doors, I'll say Sean Waltman was an ally of Jerry Jarrett, and by proxy an ally of Jeff Jarrett. Okay, he no shows. That ain't a good look.
Nope.
Stress on top of stress on top of stress. Ironically enough, if I remember correctly, who do you think, as it's laid out, when he didn't show up the night before and we're kind of juggling, who do you think the backup plan was?
Does it have to be Raven at that point?
Absolutely. Which was how ironic that we ain't going to Raven. It's not good for the story. It's certainly not good for the long-term play. This is kind of shoehorning where it just doesn't work. But look, we were kind of going to be left with
nothing
if we don't deliver something and we can't conjure up a plane ticket and get whoever else in here. That was the backup plan, but it ended up all right. Go ahead. You're about to say
something. Are you working the phones late night the night before or early Wednesday morning? Are you beating the phones to find something else?
I'm sure myself, my father, and Bob Ryder, probably us three and maybe more. I don't know, but it feels like us three with, to no avail, voicemail.
Would there have been a consideration to, I know this isn't ever the plan A, but do you think you guys would have eventually said, maybe AJ could do most of the work and Russo could just stand over there and hold the tag rope and then there's one big spot with him?
I'm sure that was put on the table. My gut tells me I would have said, you're cheating the people out of,
yes,
unless
he got his comeuppance there.
Yeah.
Then you could pay it off, but I mean, you would have had to go way over the top on something, right?
Yeah. But man, when he showed, and that brought back memories when I saw that. I'll never forget Sean walking down and look, Dave was right.
Let's throw that picture back up on YouTube. So everybody
is always super good, but He didn't look like X-Pac. He didn't look like Six-Pac. He didn't look like 1, 2, 3. He looked like a ninja.
Well, and listen, again, as you said, I mean, this guy used to be the measuring stick in the WWF. So, when the bell rings, we'll be fine. But I'm sure you have mixed emotions when he walks in the back. Like, on the one hand, probably washed over this overwhelming sensation of relief. On the other hand, I'm going to punch him. I'm so frustrated and so mad. I'm happy. I'm sad. I'm angry. I'm disappointed. I want to get over this.
I've been in these kind of positions, not identical, but like this. You go from, oh my God. And that's why, Buddy Landell, hey kid, let me teach you something. Don't ever be late. Be so damn late. They're tickled to see you and they ain't got time to bitch you out. Not only that, we didn't have time. We got to go over the match. We have 10 minutes. We got to get this down. Sting's first match in quite some time. His introduction to the company. It's a.
I mean, think about that, making a first impression. You're trying to get this guy on board. You've been trying for a year. It finally happens. And one of his opponents might not even be there until right before.
Yes.
Talk about putting your best foot forward. This is the opposite of that.
In the asylum. So there's not a lot of green rooms, as you're well aware, in the asylum.
No, and I'm sure Sting is like, I've worked the Georgia Dome and I've worked this building and that building. And now he's in a dirt and gravel parking lot in a metal tin building that we've painted black that doesn't really have the best dressing room for Sting, nor the best accommodations for him to put his makeup on. And it's been a while since he wrestled, so I'm sure he'd like to go over the match a little bit. And that guy ain't here.
Yeah, and it's June, so it's a hot box.
Yes, he's pouring sweat in makeup. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you're just like, man, I really wish I wouldn't have put that pea shooter in Vince's belly right now. Right now, I'd take a call and I'd be working Hartford tomorrow. I'm for it.
My gosh. Fun times, pal. Fun times.
The match itself is actually pretty decent. 2 3/4 stars. Sting and JArrett get the win. There's an impromptu finish. Meltzer would say Sting did his trademark spots, the scorpion, the death drop, and the stinger splashes. He looks much younger than 44, but face paint probably helps. Crowd was on their feet seeing him, probably the biggest star of the 90s that they've seen in this promotion. We bump the ref, and they're not there to make the count after Jeff hits the stroke on Styles. Russo's going to hit Jeff with a baseball bat. Raven then comes out after Russo. Douglas cuts him off again. JArrett hits another stroke on Styles, and Charles was supposed to count 3 for the pin here, but he got it too slow. By the time he got up to count, it had been so long, they felt the 3 count would look stupid, so Styles was told to kick out. JArrett then used the stroke off the middle ropes. That was the pin. Russo hit JArrett with another bat shot. Sting hit Russo with a bat shot, which he rolled out of the ring and didn't sell. And then the show ends with Raven and JArrett doing a stare down. But Sting gets in the middle and raises both sets of hands with the idea that they're now the 2 top baby faces in the group, 2 3/4 stars. Do you remember there being a timing situation with Rudy Charles? Was the second stroke supposed to be the pin? Did you call the audible and say, hey, it's been too long, kick you out? We'll do something else.
Again, with Sean not getting there, scrambled eggs, little misdirection. Yes, it was one of those deals that it didn't feel right. If I remember correctly, and look, AJ, pardon the pun, phenomenal performer. But even early AJ, he could always take audibles or call it in the ring or, hey, go ahead and kick. And AJ, he may even come up with, let's do something out of the corner, stroke off the second. I think some of the guys, I don't know if by this time they called it that. They said, hey, do the super stroke. I'm like, what's the super stroke? Oh, that's the one off the second. Oh, okay. But, Rudy in his bow tie. Remember Rudy saying, hey, for the anniversary show, should we wear something different than the stripes? And they wore the bow ties and long sleeve shirts, which I always think is a good look. But yes, we did the stroke off the second, a little audible, and we went off the air with, okay, this is where we're going with it, Jeff and Raven.
It's when it's all said and done, are you happy with how it came off, that closing scene being the 3 of you in the middle of the ring? Are you frustrated at Waltman? Are you upset that Russo didn't sell the belt shot? Are you focused on the timing of the scrambled eggs? Or are you just like, thank God, I just want to go home?
Relieved. But also, it was one of those deals, and I don't know if Bob or Janice were in the house, but you want your investor to, on the one hand, you want him to see all the adversity that you kind of fought internally in putting together this 2-hour show and actually producing. On the other hand, you really want them to see all the, I'll call it not ugliness, but just the pains of putting together, and just again, that week to week grind is such a blessing because you learn so much. But man, these times, I mean, growing pains would be an understatement, I'd say. But I was super relieved, but also, okay, at the end of the day, we delivered. And that to me, Conrad, has always been such the barometer that at the end of the night, thinking through, and again, it's always listen to the people, listen to the people, listen to the people. The people that got up out of their homes and came down and watched your show, I just think the barometer of them, and oftentimes I have just seen it completely dismissed. And I don't think that's a prudent business decision to make. The folks that care enough about your product to come see it live, you want to listen to them. You want to collectively listen to them. And the people in the arena, they love the show. Was it perfect? No, but they didn't like the Jerry Lynn deal. Okay, we didn't either. Did you like the Sean Waltman surprise? Yep, it got over. Those type barometers and measuring sticks.
Let's talk about what happened after the show. There was a meet and greet. It's like a celebration for the live crowd after the anniversary show. Originally, it was said it's exclusively for the fans who bought the $45 Golden Circle. But you guys just call an audible and say, hey, let's all celebrate. Everybody stick around for the party. I guess there's some debate in the locker room. Some of the heels think, this isn't a good idea for us to break kayfabe and us all intermingle. So Vince Russo, Shane Douglas, and Raven don't participate. Sting's not necessarily out there taking a bunch of photos, but he does come out and do a little speech where he thanks JArrett for being the guy to give him his first break in the big business. And Wade would even say that TNA officials are more optimistic than ever about their chances of securing a television deal. Although the company's still hopeful securing a national cable deal, they've even started to approach national syndication companies. So I guess that's the story, man. You got the match in the ring, as Vince used to say. You tried to send the fans home happy with a nice little meet and greet for everybody. And, hey, we lived to fight another day. We made it our first year, but we know now what we didn't know a year prior. We got to get on television. And we've taken some steps behind the scenes to start making that happen. Whew. What a day, man. Your first anniversary show.
What a year. And that meet and greet, to me, how it's reported, the reality was, there was such a good upward buzz in that it was directed, hey, heels, y'all don't need to be involved in this. If you want to wave from afar, if you so be it, but heels aren't required. Sting, will you just say a few words? Sure, I will. Babyface, get out there. What we didn't want to do is, if I remember, the $45 Golden Circle or $55, whatever it may be, I think they got a T-shirt. They had already kind of got their swag,
their value, yeah.
Yeah, and we made sure that priority, they were the ones that got the autographs first and everything. But the people that in the asylum that enjoyed the show, let them stick around and party. And concession stand stayed open a little bit longer, and they're selling more beer and Cokes and popcorn and all that. It was a festive night that I think permeated, and that's why those diehard TNA fans in the early years, I still to this day got a lot of gratitude because they were a part of that studio audience, if you will, that translated. And, a lot of people, it's kind of one of those things. When we put together the sizzle reel to go into Spike TV, you have to kind of look at, all right, what is the piece of footage that we're going to show this global broadcaster at Paramount? And we had that. Certainly we had some Fox Sports footage, but the Asylum and the highlight reels and seeing Sting and others and all that. Okay, you've been around now, so you've produced, and that conversation that we had from day one with Kevin K. Oh, wait, you've got how many episodes? So you've done this, and Keith Mitchell's in the room, and my father's in the room, and we're having that conversation. I've never really lost sight that that Asylum vibe was a part of getting us to where we needed to be profitable. So, year one was one of those nights that we all kind of celebrated together in a feel good way.
Well, we're going to be doing a little celebrating over on adfreeshows.com. First of all, we're fresh off of a really fun Top Guy weekend. Hope you'll make plans to join us for Top Guy weekend next year. Jeff, you and I had the pleasure of doing something that I don't think has ever been done before in wrestling. I mean, you've been around this game for decades. Have you ever seen anything like Top Guy Tussle where fans book the show? I mean, we said, here's 5 baby faces. We said, here's 5 heels. Now let's show you how you put a show together. I mean, we did the booking meeting right in front of everybody with great minds like Kevin Sullivan and Eric Bischoff and Ricky Morton and Jeff Jarrett and David Crockett. And the fans voted, here's how many matches we'll do. And here's the structure. And here's who's doing a promo. And then some of our top guys, you'll be the manager and you'll be the ring announcer. And I've never seen anything like that before. What'd you think?
Conrad and we talked some eyeballs and looks that we gave each other.
Yes.
And over the last couple of years, me being intricately involved in minor league baseball, Springfield Lucky Horseshoes, we're rocking and rolling, but on the baseball side of things. And so I've heard different things about a Major League Baseball fantasy camp where guys go down for a weekend and kind of get to, play a baseball game with other guys and that kind of stuff. And that's kind of cool, but you've played baseball as a kid growing up or high school and maybe even some college players, but the Major League Baseball camp. And then you hear kind of these cruise ships that have, cruise with 80s rocker bands, and you get to have unique meet and greets and all that, but you don't really get to get up on stage and sing next to Poison or Quiet Riot or whatever it is. Those are the kind of two things that I think about: the rock and roll, the music production element of the show, Conrad, that professional wrestling is, and then, the in-ring content or the baseball game or the basketball game or whatever. Top Guy Tussle, and I don't want to get too deep in the woods here, but Top Guy Weekend is about as an immersive experience if you're a wrestling fan. Because so many fans, millions upon millions of fans, have seen professional wrestling through the years. And I don't want to say pull the curtain back and all that kind of stuff, but to experience what the team put on, and I hate to give Dave Silva a shout out, but I will, but the entire ad-free team and then the ad-free family, Conrad, that weekend, it's unbelievable the experience that was created for the wrestling fan. Because at the end of the day, that's what I am. That's what you are. That's what top guys are. But man, Conrad, hats off, dude. I've got some ideas. I think you could tour that, but you can't do it every weekend. I think, where's Top Guy Weekend going to be next year? I don't know. Is it going to be back in Huntsville? I've already started thinking, like, do you do, I don't know, Conrad. I better shut up. I'm throwing different ideas out there.
Well, I got some ideas, and we'll talk about them off air. But
the experience is unbelievable. It really was.
You got to go join us. By all means, please do. What we did this year is we allowed you to cut a promo on Eric Bischoff with David Crockett holding the microphone for you against the old JCP set. That's what we did on Friday, along with some trivia and Rebel karaoke. On Saturday, you heard a conversation with Conrad that we decided not to tape. We got deep in the weeds with Kevin Sullivan. Stay tuned for more from the Taskmaster here on adfreeshows.com. But then folks got to get in the ring and be trained by the same guy who taught Vince McMahon and The Rock and Kurt Angle how to wrestle. And now he trains you, Dr. Tom Pritchard. And then the next day, boy, we put it all together. You heard some voices you've never heard from before, like Dick Cheatham, who was one of the head accountants for Turner. He knew where all the bodies were buried in WCW. And in fact, Doug Dillinger probably carried some of the shovels. He was there too, along with Mr. Crockett and Mr. Bischoff. And then we sat down to put together an unbelievable wrestling card by the fans, for the fans. You guys were in control. It only happens at Top Guy Weekend. Also over at adfreeshows.com, we just did a fun watch along. My man Cassio Kid joined Jeff to watch the tag team match against FTR. So if you like talking about current stuff, man, you just can't beat it. They even took a look at the visit to the Briscoe farm, the grass outlaw, if you will. That's all available now over at adfreeshows.com. If your business targets men that are 25 to 54 years old, there's no better place to advertise than right here. You hear some of the same ads over and over and over. Why is that? Well, because it really works. Find out how affordable it is for us to promote your product at advertisewithjarrett.com. That's advertisewithjarrett.com. Love to see your creator wrestlers you've made in Fight Forever for Double J. Tweet us those on Twitter at MyWorldPod. At MyWorldPod will also work on Facebook and Instagram. The easiest, cheapest, fastest way to support the show is to go to myworldonyoutube.com. It's one thing to see the show or to hear the show. It's another to see it. You get all the cool little visual aids with you. I actually run mine in the backdrop sometimes at the office. I recommend that highly. myworldonyoutube.com. Lots of fun new merch out available as well over at boxofgimmicks.com. And we've got so much fun stuff coming here through the rest of the summer. We'll talk about TNA's second year, how many times you've run into a celebrity in pro wrestling, the Spike years, Fall Brawl 2000, the evolution of Global Force Wrestling and working together with TNA, the end of your 1998 in the WWF. Of course, the Dixie Carter saga continues. We'll even touch on Dusty Rhodes. But next week, Global Force invades TNA. What happened when you bring Global Force Wrestling into total nonstop action? We might even get into Slammiversary 2017. I don't know what I expected today, man, but this was fun. Talking about the Sting stuff, talking about the Waltman stuff, just the stress and the pressure. I know it wasn't fun for you to live it, but it was fun for me to hear about it today.
No, I enjoyed, like I do, these, not every memory is fantastic, but just kind of going back down memory lane in this way. Stop and smell the roses. I'm not saying there was a huge bouquet of roses to be smelled during this time, but getting to that 1 year, is a challenge, but it's fun to talk about. Oh man. And that was, God, it's hard to believe that was Sting's debut appearance for us. And then what he did just this last Wednesday night. So funny how our industry just keeps rolling along and rolling along and rolling along.
Jeff, as we were recording, some sad news has just popped up. I know that a lot of folks are getting excited across the pond for a big Money in the Bank pay-per-view. You probably wonder why we didn't talk about it at the top of the show. Well, we recorded this on Friday morning, but as we were recording, news has come out that Darren Drostov has passed away.
Oh,
What a tragedy, him having his career cut short, and now he's gone way, way too soon. Hopefully that means that he's no longer in pain and he's finally got some of that peace and contentment. Did you ever have a chance to meet Dross?
Oh gosh. Conrad, I was in Nassau. I don't think I was up next, but I worked that night. I mean, Droz was in the dressing room. I can't say I had any singles or tags with him, but no, we tried. I mean, yeah, we were in the same dressing room at the same time. He came in there for a short time. He was known as Puke with the Road Warriors, but yeah. And then the last time I saw Darren was I believe in Philly, Icons of Wrestling. God rest, just tragedy. I mean, it is, the risk we take every time we step in the ring. Sometimes there's more risk than others, but still there is a risk. And, Darren, that bump, he never walked again. And that is his life changed in an instant. And that's tough. So, just can't imagine, that was, Conrad, how long ago was that? 20
24 years, maybe. I think it was 99.
Yeah. So, well, thoughts and prayers go out to his entire family, his loved ones. Like he's his physical body, failed him, unfortunately, but his spirit, every time I saw him thereafter, was just a glowing spirit. So that's sad news, Conrad. Again, my heart goes out to his entire family. What a great dude.
Hate to end it on a sour note, but wanted to at least acknowledge the late, great Draws. Tell your people you love them, folks. Tomorrow's not promised, and we're doing the best we can over here, and hope you guys are as well. And I hope you guys have a great 4th of July, and we'll be back next week right here on My World.
Peace.